you tired of small talk? Me too. How do we channel spirit messages? What can angels and demons teach us? What's quantum leaping? How do we shift timelines? Who are the star seeds among us? Are dragons real? Big Souls brings big ideas down to earth. Let's plant some abundant seeds into the garden of your mind. Join the big talk. Welcome to Big Souls, Big Ideas, where we replace the small talk with big talk. I'm your host, Stelian, and I've got an amazing guest today who's going to be guiding us into the intricacies of the nervous system. Nervous system expert, Caroline Shine. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I love that we started our pre-episode chat with the excitement that happens in life. Does the nervous system get out of whack only when we're going through rough episodes in our life, or does it also get out of whack when we're super excited about big milestones in life?
Well, yes. So what we tend to think about, or what we imagine when we think about these big milestones is let's go back. Can you give me an example? Because I work well in examples, and that's the best way I can talk and teach. Yeah.
So your fear that you might get fired at your job is something that might disrupt your nervous system, but also you might be fearing more work with more exposure that comes with the promotion. So you might think, I want the promotion, but then that excitement gets too overpowering for you. So your nervous system doesn't know what to do with itself to balance, to continue the normal flow.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this case, you could actually get really excited in a bad way, and you can get into a state, what we call the sympathetic state. So we're overactivated. So this overwhelm, it just makes you kind of freeze, but also very like your car is on accelerating pressing on the accelerator, but you're also pressing on the brake. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Make it stop, not so fast.
Yeah. And also what can happen though, it's not just about becoming overwhelmed and going on overdrive. You can actually completely freeze, like shut when your body's in shutdown. Yeah. So when we talk about nervous system and nervous system regulation, it's not just about calming everything, right? Getting rid of the anxiety. It can also mean actually activating your nervous system enough so you can do what you need to deal with the challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one more example that comes to mind is when you're about to experience your graduation or when you're about to experience your wedding day, that anticipation and the expectations attached to that big event, they might get you to experience different aspects of your inner wiring that you didn't even know it existed, because society prepares us. Your graduation is a huge milestone. You should celebrate. Your wedding is a huge milestone. The birth of your child is a huge milestone. But it's very one-dimensional from the outside in. Whereas when you're inside that experience, it's complicated. It's complex.
100%. And, you could, well, what brings to mind is the birth of my daughter. So before I knew all about this, I didn't know, but at the time I was completely dysregulated. And so after the birth of my daughter, I thought everything was going to be amazing. And I read about postnatal depression, but, I just was like, yeah, whatever, right? It was only after I had my daughter where everything just came crashing down. So first of all, my birth plan didn't go according to plan. Like, when does it, right? I had an emergency C-section. I went through almost 9 hours of labor. It was, and she was in the wrong position. So it meant that the pain that I felt before I got the anesthesia, it was more than, like, it was excruciating, but it was even more just because of the way she was pressing down on my body. So that was traumatic. I also had unresolved traumas. And then I had this huge life change, right? And so, yeah, what was supposed to be an amazing experience turned out to be a nightmare for me. Yeah.
A complex experience.
Complex, completely, yeah.
And I think we have a tendency in society to kind of downplay certain emotions and to focus on raising the image of others, like Inside
Mm,
Out, when joy is taking center stage. But there are all these other emotions that are equal players of the story that affect your performance in life as well. And I think schools don't do a great job educating us about emotions, and they also don't do a great job educating us about the nervous system. So,
mm.
what would you say is exactly the nervous system?
Okay. Are we going to go granular? Can
Go
we
granular.
break it down? So basically, it is the nervous system is a network of cells and tissues and messages between the brain and the spinal cord and all the other parts of the body. And so we have two parts of the central nervous system. We've got the brain and the spinal cord, and then we have the peripheral nervous system, which is basically all the other nerves that run throughout the body. So think of it like your body's electrical wiring system. So it's like the internet of your body. So all the messages are zipping back at lightning speed all the time. So if we want to go with the whole technology analogy, it's like
Mm.
the central nervous system is like the main server, and the parasympathetic nervous system is a network of cables that run throughout the whole body, connecting everything together. So just like a computer processes data and sends out commands, say to like a printer or a monitor, the central nervous system processes and sends out these instructions to the peripheral nervous system. And then this system makes sure that everything's done and gives back information to the central nervous system. So it's really, really a sophisticated network.
I love the example that you use because it's almost as if we're talking about the biology, which is
Mm.
the hard drive, and then
Mhm.
we have the nervous system, which is the internet connection. So if you have a computer without internet connection, it still functions, but how much can you actually get done, especially in today's world?
Yeah,
Not that
100.
much.
No, not much at all. No. And this brings me to this whole concept or the process called bottom up processing. And I think it's really important to talk about this because we'll talk about like the things that we can do to help us, navigate life with as little stress and as little suffering as possible, right? Even though it's impossible not to, because as Buddha says, life is suffering, right? Yeah, so this key process is called bottom up processing. So it's one way that our brains make sense of the world, right? So it works like this. So first you have your senses, right? So your eyes pick up information from our surroundings, or your ears, your skin, whatever, all your senses, yeah? And then this information travels to our brain, and it just starts with simple details. And then our brain combines all of these little simple details into
Mhm.
more complex ideas. So, for example, let's say you see a dog, right? So your eyes first notice all the basic shapes and colors, and then your brain puts these together, right? So you then start to recognize it has a type of fur, a tail, four legs, and then finally your brain combines all of this to go, oh, that's a dog,
That's a
right?
done. Hmm.
So it happens so quickly, all right? But it's really how we experience the world around us, and it actually shapes our reactions and decisions. So yeah, that's one process. So, and that is a big process. But then there's the top-down processing. That's what we know of, right? The mindset, the thought stuff, right?
Yes.
How the
Mhm.
thought affects what we do. Um, so in this case, it's not really the body telling the brain what it's doing or what it's feeling or what it's experiencing. It's the thoughts, right? So let's just say, Stella, I said, okay, you're going to do a TED talk in 2 months' time. What's going to happen, right? You're going to be like, what? Okay, but because hopefully you are regulated, you will be using certain techniques, right, to calm yourself down, right? You'll be practicing and you'll be visualizing your success. Do you do visualization?
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll be talking to yourself positively, right? You'll be like, oh, I'm going to do this. I can do this. I've done X, Y, Z, and surely I can do that. And you're going to try and not convince, but you're going to rationalize this. It's like, I'm not here to fight any big, bears, right? This is just a talk. It's not life threatening. So you're going to use all of these high cognitive processes to really affect your physical state. So that's an example of top-down processing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the reason why I have a body first approach and many somatic practitioners do is that bottom up processing accounts for 80% of how we experience the world, whereas top down is only 20%. So it's really good to get to the lower hanging fruit, which is
Yeah.
the body.
The foundation, really.
Yeah,
And
100%.
I did have a question that you just answered. Is the nervous system more connected to the biology or the psychology?
So that's where the whole body bottom up. That's 80. So
Yeah.
it's more to the body. Although we kind of, I don't know what's happened along the way, Stella. It's almost as if we've disconnected to it in a way, just the way that current life is at the moment. And we prioritize our mind over our body.
I mean, there are a lot of emerging theories that life is controlled by our thoughts and the quality of our thoughts and
Mhm.
our ability to be conscious thinkers and therefore conscious leaders of our life so that we can
Mhm.
direct every action in alignment with what we're actually feeling so that everything that we say is in integrity. But
Mm.
that integrity is in alignment with our well-being, not
Yeah.
just for the sake of being seen for being loyal, but being loyal to who we are, so that that
Mm.
authenticity allows us to be more present, more
Mhm.
calm, more balanced.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're ignoring a huge aspect in this conversation, which is if you don't change your diet, if you don't change when you sleep, when you're doing certain restoration activities,
Mhm.
your nervous system is always going to be disbalanced, dysregulated, out of
Yeah.
harmony, because you're not paying attention to what your body actually needs, because you're
Yeah.
thinking too much.
Yeah. 100%. And I think mindset work is so important, right? Having a good mindset is always going to be better than having a crap mindset. But it's not going to be the main thing that drives. It is really a combination of everything. And like you say, yeah, fair enough. We can do all the regulating activities.
Mhm.
If we don't look after the body, the actual hardware, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking things like certain situations, right, that you put yourself in time and time again that you know are harmful for you, or certain food or drink, substances that you consume. It all plays a huge role, and I would love to be able to spend months down the rabbit hole in the nutrition section, but right now that's not my main focus. My main focus is focusing more on the body first approach and the nervous system. But yes, you're absolutely right. We do need a holistic approach to this.
And we need to start with the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're discussing the mind, we're discussing the mindset so that we can return
Mm.
back to the body. And I think
Mm.
this is where school is failing once again. It's not preparing us with enough information to understand how our own bodies work
Yeah.
and what is actually beneficial for us. It's like it's a transmission of information that is available elsewhere, and the school is just repeating it, but it's not giving you all the tools and all the information that you need to be a successful human being. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say, especially for women and that teenager kind of elevation to young adult, if you don't understand how your menstrual cycle is going to impact your life,
Oh
get
yeah.
ready for an emotional roller coaster
Mm.
nonstop, because that is every week of your life.
Yeah.
There are different levels of the hormones that your food can directly impact, which is, going back to the nutrition. So I think this is a brilliant point that you made about nutrition. It is the fuel for this
Mm.
machine, and this machine can be a huge temple if we wanted to make it a temple, or it can also be, just a fast food factory. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And that brings me to a really good point about actually incorporating more of this knowledge with the menstrual strike cycle, because a lot of my clients are women. I do have men clients, but yeah, and who are also going through perimenopause, which has a lot of similar or the same symptoms
Mhm.
when you are dysregulated. Yeah.
So, what would you say are some of the obvious signs of a nervous system overload or a
Mhm.
dysregulated nervous system, and what might be some of the less obvious signs?
Mm. Okay, so physically, you are going to feel like your heart rate is racing. So think, when you're feeling anxious, right? Get body aches, chest pain, digestive issues, dizziness, low libido. What else? A weakened immune system. Yep. And also increased weight gain, which seems almost unfair because you're like, I'm stressing and I'm like in this state. Why doesn't this burn calories? But no, you might experience increased weight gain. Also muscle tension because your body is in this state getting ready to fight, even though you don't have that bear or lion coming at you. It is like an existential threat to you. So your muscles will tense up, your posture can change, you can feel more pain as well. And behaviorally, it's like you're a juggler that's had too many balls thrown at you and you're just dropping them, right? So you might, because everything is so overwhelming, you might be neglecting certain responsibilities. You'll find your eating habits change because when we're really stressed, the body craves something like quick to make it feel better. And what else feels better than fast food, right? Like the high fat and high sugar content, right? You might be relying on caffeine a lot to get you through the day or alcohol to help you deal with the day. And you might also develop habits, like nervous habits, like nail biting. So that's the behavioral symptoms. And then you have your cognitive symptoms. So you might be experiencing memory problems, difficulty concentrating, poor judgment, poor decision making, and you might get stuck in this loop of negative thinking and anxious thoughts. Like not one or the other, can be a combination of both. And then emotionally, you're going to feel like you're basically on this roller coaster of emotions, right? And you just feel like you can't get off it. So you'll be flitting between moody, being short-tempered, agitated, overwhelmed, fearful, worried, all the yummy things. And you'll be really irritable because, yeah, you just feel like every little thing is like the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. But what's really important when you're looking at all of these symptoms is that it will really vary between person to person, depending on a number of factors like your age, where you are in life, like the situation that you're in, genetic factors, and other health conditions and genetics as well. So yeah, it all plays a part in how it manifests, and that some people just will have more physical symptoms, and some people might have more mental and emotional and cognitive challenges. Yeah.
I think what you're describing sounds like the majority of people. I think most people are experiencing a number of those symptoms, and they think it's normal because everybody else around them is experiencing those symptoms. And it doesn't matter if they're working in a corporate environment or a startup environment, if it's at the office, every single day, or working from home. There is this stress in society that has been normalized. I don't think, even if you heal individually, when you go back to the workplace, when you go out with your friends, you're still exposed to that stress and it affects you, even if you're not. It's like when people are smoking, even if you're not the smoker, if you're around a smoker, they affect you. I would say this is exactly how our nervous system feels when we're around people that are not regulated. What's the
Absolutely.
solution? Is there a solution?
There is a solution. But before we get to the solution, do we have time to talk about what happens when the nervous system is underloaded?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because that's what we talk about all the time. It's overactivated. There are so many of us who suffer from underactivation. And again, it could be the same event that's triggering it, right? It could be the same trauma, or it could be the same death in the family, or you being fired, or a divorce that can send someone into overstimulation or hyper arousal, and it might send me into hypo arousal, right? So in this state, it looks a little bit different. So physically, you're going to feel really fatigued, low energy. You're going to feel heavy, weighed down. and your heart rate will slow down a bit. You'll feel your blood pressure will drop, and you'll experience digestive issues because that's what the parasympathetic nervous system regulates, right? So you might feel nauseous, you might feel constipated or be constipated. You get shallow or slow breathing. You might feel cold, especially in the extremities, so your hands and your feet. And you'll get dizzy or lightheaded, and especially when you're going through something really stressful. Cognitively, you will have a lot of the signs that perimenopausal people go through. So brain fog, difficulty thinking, feeling really spaced out or disconnected from reality. You'll have memory problems, you won't be able to focus well or concentrate well, and you'll just feel like your thinking is sluggish and slow. And one of the big things for entrepreneurs or creatives is that they'll feel like they're not able to come up with ideas anymore. Like their creativity is stifled. So that's a big one if you are a creative type. In terms of emotional signs, you'll feel depressed, you feel numb, flat, you feel hopeless, be sense of helplessness. And then there's also, apart from the motivation as well, low motivation, then there's this sense of shame and unworthiness that comes not just from the situation at hand, right? It's like, oh, I can't do anything, like I'm useless. It's also unresolved things from the past that can play into it as well. So yeah, that's what can happen when it's hypo-aroused.
I would say if we had all the information about all of this, the workplaces would look completely different because we would actually communicate to one another. And when we have a bad day, we're going to talk about it. Therefore, we're going to heal through it together or pass through it because we don't necessarily want to heal people. We want to allow them to experience what they're experiencing. Out to what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Why some people just kind of lose their spark, why some people, go into overdrive and they reach that burnout. They are just trying to overcompensate for a battle that's happening inside of them and they don't know what to do about it. They know they're struggling, but they cannot even recognize that it's a struggle, that it's a battle. It's like a war zone, but it's inside of them.
100%. We would have so much more compassion if we knew all this stuff. It wouldn't just be like, oh my gosh, she's so flaky, right? Like it's a character, a flaw. But it's actually, something going on with the nervous system. Like it's something, a glitch in a system,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say both ways. It's a bit of a glitch, especially if you're overworking your computer and you've opened a lot of tabs,
Yeah.
it gets slowed down. But if you've installed a virus or something like that, if you've picked up some file that you shouldn't have picked up, it kind of slows you down on a different, just working on one thing, but it's just slowing you down and it's kind of disturbing your space. And it's that memory, that the traumatic memory that needs your attention so that you can process it. And if you're not equipped to actually open that file and face it, you just ignore it with every being of your fiber. Like, nope, you don't exist.
100%.
And
Yeah.
actually, that point that you made about losing your ideas as a creative person, I think they focus on that. They don't focus on, oh, something's happening in me. I must take a break. I must go for a walk. I must do something. I must talk. They focus on what if I lost what made me valuable to society? That
Yeah.
initial motivation to focus into healing.
Yes. Yes. Because for a lot of people, myself included in the past, not anymore, I put so much emphasis and focus on what I could achieve or what I could create and how much money I could make. And I made that mean something about me, as if that was what made me valuable or worthy. So definitely when you identify with this creativity and you think that's who I am, and when you start losing it, then you can get into the spiral, which then makes all the symptoms even worse. Yeah.
I have a side question that kind of comes to mind now is I did lose my ideas at some point. And I would say there was more of a spiritual connection that I kind of lost myself in life. But I do recognize that period of being a period of me being around people that just weren't aligned with me, whether they were narcissistic, manipulative, or they were just,
going with the flow. So they weren't really caring about me as a human being. What would you say is the impact of having their own crowd around you on your nervous system?
So much, because there is this thing called co-regulation. So the nervous systems of those around you and who you spend the most time with will affect you. Absolutely, it will affect your nervous system. So if you are around someone who is in hyper mode, right, who is in a sympathetic state, it's only natural, if you spend enough time with them, that your nervous system will pick up on that. And you've got this thing called mirror neurons, right? And they mirror everything. And so you're going to pick up on that, and you're going to be affected as well. So you know that saying, I don't know who said it, it was Tony Robbins or someone like that, like, you really have to be careful about like the 5 people that you spend the most time with. I think that's really relevant here in this context. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of high performers, when they're going through a funk, they think about their projects, they think about their tasks, but they don't actually consider, wait, who am I actually spending time outside of work? Who's affecting me on an emotional level that I'm then bringing into the workplace? And
Yes.
maybe even vice versa for people that are in relationships and their relationship is starting to go in a different direction that what one of or two of the partners thought about. Maybe it's their outside activities as hobbies and social circle work that affect that relationship by proximity because they're involved with tasks that are not aligned with them anymore, I would say. I think when our nervous system is suffering as well, it's trying to give us an indication that we are losing our energetic flow in a way that we're either overworking ourselves or not working enough in the direction that excites us, that makes us happy, that makes us feel fulfilled. So we're trying to make it work, but some things are just, it's like the signs on the street. They're there to stop you from going into a dead end or stop you so that you don't crash because it's a language. And I
Yeah.
would say the nervous system has its own language for those that are ready to bring that sense of unity with self.
Yeah, it really does. And I think a lot of people kind of shy away or turn away from it because dealing with these signs or reading the signs and dealing with these emotions that you've, kind of brushed under the cover, the carpet, they're not pleasant at first, right? It's not nice to have to go back and really like be okay, or even to accept like grief or pain or whatever it is that you're feeling, right? But it really is the only way out when you can start to accept it and be there in the body, and yeah, before you can integrate that and then get over it, if you want to call it that, get over it in bunny ears. Yeah.
I would absolutely love to ask you how can we regulate the nervous system, but first a little detour for anyone that's listening that might be around their parents or older generations, their family that might be a little bit dysregulated, but they don't really know anything about it, first of all, or they're not really interested in changing their ways. They're not really interested in, for them, it is what it is. Whereas for the younger generations, we still have perhaps the energy to fight through it and then figure out a way to live in a healthier way. But for some of the older generations, they can be a little bit stubborn, which again has an impact on us because we want to affect them positively. What would be your advice to someone who's dealing in a situation like that?
Well, I think the best thing is to work on your own body, your own regulation, because of this beautiful thing called co-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Just by helping your body feel safe and becoming more resilient, and there is this term in this space that we call widening, or the window of tolerance. So when we widen the window of tolerance to uncomfortable things, right? It does magic. I can't explain it. I don't think there's a study about it either. For example, when I started working on my nervous system, I had a lot of issues with my family, and they weren't major, but it was enough to really, really upset me at times. But magically, over the months and the couple of years since working on it, things just like, what's happened? Like the issues that were issues aren't issues anymore. So I think the best advice really would be just to work on yourself. Work on yourself, because we're not here to change anybody, like anybody else. So yeah, that's it. It's as simple as that. I know it. Yeah, it'd be nice to like say, well, go to this link or go to that site, right? But no, just work on yourself.
I would say it's a powerful reminder, because if other people can affect us, so can we affect other people. And then that makes us strengthen our relationship with ourselves and focus even more on being the positive change makers that bring that ripple effect in society, which is kind of reinforcing that inner leader in the best possible way, because your energy is kind of healing others by example. Just you being there as the example that things can be different, things can be done in a better way, in a more balanced way. So powerful reframe, I would say. And that takes me to, how can we actually regulate the nervous system for those that are doing the work and they're serious about shifting their life for the better?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a nice answer that might not be nice to your mind, or to those who are listening. And the simple thing is through your body, and it's as simple as that. It's not complicated. It's not expensive, right? You just need your body. So in the case of hyperarousal, so when you're in this whole fight or flight state, a lot of grounding exercises, such as just scanning or sensory experiences, like sensory meditation. So instead of just sitting there and trying to meditate and trying not to think of anything, which is impossible, by the way, going on walking meditations where you're focusing on things like the feeling or the pressure of the ground against your shoe or your foot, right? And not for the whole duration. It's just like from now till the next tree, right? Or going on hearing meditation. So where you're walking and you're just focusing on the sounds that are really close to you or not so close and really far away from you. So just really engaging in your senses, which really brings you back to your body. So you're actually gently, through these grounding practices, you're taking your mind away from all the fears, your anxieties and worries, and you're bringing it back to the now, which is so, so important, because really, there is no bear chasing you in most cases, right? It's
In
just
most cases.
in most cases, it's just the mind doing its best trying to protect you, right? But in a very, insufferable way. So we want, take the focus, change the channel from worry network to the here and now network. So that's one way to really calm down the nervous system. And for people who need a little bit of activation, it's as simple, again, as using your body. So this time, instead of doing things that like calm you down, we want to really kind of stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. So things like dancing, like an active sport. Now I know it's not possible for anyone who's really like so burnt out and cannot move, right? In the depths of depression. So in that case, I would get them to slowly do some deep breathing exercises that don't calm you down but really activate you. So I don't know if you are a bit of a yogi, Stella, but you know the breath of fire.
Yes.
Yes. So things like that are quick pace, where you're like, right, where you're actively, like forcefully breathing in and out. So doing things like that for 30 seconds at a time, and then extending it, that can really help wake up the nervous system. Another thing you can do is really, again, playing with the sensations, like the sensory stuff. So really focusing on the temperature of an ice cube, for instance, or you could be having a little smelling meditation where you get maybe some essential oil and really like breathe it in. Don't be silly or unsafe about it, but just really savoring what you can smell, right? Or what you can taste. It could be something really sour, like lemon, something a little bit strong, and that can awaken the nervous system. So, and also tapping as well. Tapping is really good for the parasympathetic nervous system. And for the sympathetic nervous system, it's more like you could do like, how would I describe it? So exercises or practices where you focus on pushing down, or against a surface. So that's a good way to wake up the nervous system. But it's really about finding the simplest and the most enjoyable, or the least painful, not painful, that's the wrong word, but the least
the path of least resistance, but
yes, that's
also
right.
introducing a little
That's
bit of Mhm.
yeah. So it really depends. So yeah, the best one is the one that you can do often.
Make it a habit. I
Make
think
it
a lot of people get this wrong as well.
yeah.
And I've done
Yeah.
that in my life. You think you've discovered a way to balance yourself and then you stop doing it. Your nervous system goes back. And the same with the muscles. If you don't go to the gym every single day or do something physical every single day, your body is going to go back to a state of, the previous state,
Yeah.
which is a more loose state of the muscles, because the muscles are not, there is no resistance to the muscles for them to expand or for them to be strong.
Mhm.
But obviously don't try to stay in a state of stress so that your muscles are that's not the best exercise
No,
regime.
no, it's not like this. I don't know what therapy it is, but exposure therapy. It's not that at all. It's not, shocking your body so much that you get used to it, because
Yeah.
you're never going to get used to all these, dysregulating stresses, right? It's about gently expanding that window of tolerance to uncomfortable things through some of the practice, and just being aware and throwing lots of compassion, because I think that's one thing that's not talked about enough when we, do these protocols, right? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
to like 200, right? It's just really a lot of self-compassion and a lot of self-forgiveness, especially when we're really over stimulated and we get irritable and we just yell at people for no reason, right? Is to really drop that judgment, right? And please don't go down this rabbit hole. Oh my God, I'm doing all these practices, but why am I still like this? The thing is, these things take time, and you know it, right? It's just like any fitness regime. It takes time, and sometimes you will have decades of all this stuff and all these habits, right? And all these habitual reactions to kind of, undo or rewire. So, yeah, a lot of self-compassion.
We're given a lot of solutions to undo the damage, but the damage is continuously applied, so the solutions have to be continuously applied as well. And you're not really building a habit just so that you can do it for a couple of months. You're building a habit for your whole life. It's a lifetime habit, and I don't think we have that mindset in society that we pick up on habits so that we can maintain them, so that they can be part of our identity, so that we can maintain that new sense of self. We think of habits as, when I was 25, I did that. When I was 26, I did that. 27 now, what I'm going to do. 28, what I'm going to do. We think of habits as something that is transitional, as something that just happens for a certain amount of time. But it's a little bit like eating. You need eating to be healthy. And the more you understand what to eat, the better you get at eating, even though you were raised with that habit. Well, it's the same with the nervous system regulation. It's a habit that the more you understand how it works and what you can apply, the better you get at it until the day you depart planet Earth. But in the process, you can affect so many people to change their lives as well. And I would say something that really helps me calm my nervous system, or kind of bring balance to it, because sometimes it's not about calming. It's recognize what the emotion is that you're feeling. If it's anger tends to want to be released. So dancing, boxing, that's a great way to channel some of it outside of you, and then just part ways with it. Wish it well and part ways with it. Whereas if you're feeling grief, if you're feeling sadness, I think pushing yourself with these very aggressive exercises, your body might read that as if you're trying to run away from yourself. That sadness really wants your presence back to yourself. So it's more calming practices, like you said, like stretches, or even those contemporary dances where you just kind of embrace yourself. That's one way to strengthen that relationship with yourself, by feeling yourself, literally.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. And that brings me to a point of this, like you said, it's not something that you just need to do and
Mhm.
hammer away at. We don't want to like regulated AF, right? Where a lot of people just want to be the best, or, have the biggest muscles. It's not about that at all. And it's also not about doing it just so that we don't feel pain. Like you said,
Mm.
like Because when you do that, the opposite happens, right? When you are so like focused on getting better and not feeling the feelings that you're feeling, it can actually pull you back into whatever dysregulated state you're in. Yeah.
It's about understanding yourself better and all of the emotions that come as
Mm.
part of it. What are you actually feeling? Because what you mentioned about being the best at something, that usually involves you taking into account somebody else perceiving you as the best. Your nervous system regulation is about how you perceive yourself. And
Mm.
if there is a mismatch between what you're doing, how you're perceiving yourself, how you're trying to persuade yourself that you are, you're always going to struggle because you're going to be thinking about how others are perceiving you. They don't matter. They're a mirror. If anything, they're a mirror to what's happening inside of you.
Mm.
But the other day I went for a walk and I remember I was quite stressed. There was a lot of tension here. And I was like, okay, let's chalk it out. Let's not think about anything. Let's just listen to music. And by the end of the walk, I started yawning. I was like, yes, my body is decompressing.
Yes, that's such a good sign. Yawning, burping, farting, even.
Release. Yeah, whatever you're holding
Yeah.
on to is that release.
Yeah.
But it's quite interesting that it took an hour of walking for the body to
Mm.
finally be like, okay, it's safe. And then
Yeah.
started yawning.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And those that practice yoga will know this feeling. At the end of the yoga, you might start yawning. And it's not
Oh,
just
yeah.
because of the dark room, it's that release
Yes.
that's within your body.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's so funny when I step on the mat, I just can't wait till Shavasana, right? I'm like, oh
Mm.
my God, another 59 minutes and I'm counting down. By the end of it, I'm just like, oh my God, like, why am I not doing this every day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think we have a trickster mind every now and then that tries to trick us. Oh, you don't have time for that workout, but you have time to say yes to this task and that task and that task. Because once again, we're thinking about what are people going to say? We're basing our decisions on what are people going to say if we say no to them, but we're saying no to ourselves. So once again, we need to bring back that connection that we have with the focus back to that connection. I've been absolutely enjoying our conversation, Caroline. And I have one final question for you that I think might get people who are listening to think about the nervous system in a different way. What's something that everyone should know about the nervous system from day one at school, which is, I suppose, for parents, this is a great exercise to do with your children, and for younger people, I mean, whatever your age is, you
Yeah.
know somebody that's younger than you. So whatever you think about nervous system, you can start that conversation with somebody that's younger than you because they have more time to get
Yeah.
into that
Yeah.
balance. Mm.
Well, I'd like everyone, every child, every parent, everybody to know how inherently wise our body is. And when I talk about body, it's not just the body, like the physical body, but also like that includes the brain and nervous system, right? Well, the brain is part of the nervous system. So, yeah, and that it's constantly working for us to keep us balanced and healthy, and that it will show us signs through, our physiological responses to tell us when, things aren't in balance. Yeah, so I guess if I could get a magic wand, right, and I'd be able to insert some kind of curriculum across the board, across all schools of all ages and classes and children of all ages, I'd I'd have like a manual of sorts where we go through the basics like we did today, just the basics of the nervous system, like how it works in terms of its physiology and the anatomy, and then go through all of the things that it can manifest as when we're out of balance. And yeah, so when we know that, then we know what we can do. And obviously the teachers will know because they have, they're teaching this stuff, right? So they'll be able to turn to the teachers if there are any problems or issues. And another thing I would love is if the children had to, as part of their PE or physical education, like classes, do somatic practices like yoga or body scanning, different forms of meditation, so that it will really help the children go through and deal with all the challenges that come with growing up, learning, and trying to navigate navigate their world really. So yeah, that's what I would do.
It's yeah. I mean, if you had a magic wand, you'd probably do a lot more than that. But that is a great starting point. And I think it's useful to mention that I've done this kind of research, this studying many times, and I keep forgetting the details because I didn't learn them when I was a child. I started learning them a few years ago. So your brain is going to have a bit of a resistance to the new knowledge. You have to keep revisiting it, especially
Mm.
because it's so important for you to integrate that knowledge. Once you integrate it, you will be able to help others as well. Once you learn the basics of how your body works, and you can listen to podcasts that of people that talk about different aspects of the healing, of the understanding your body, understanding your mind, and kind of holistic living, so that they bring back that knowledge to you, even if it's not what's in the textbooks, because
Mm.
you're going to be able to memorize things through other connections better.
Yeah. And to be honest, Stella, you don't need to know the nitty gritty. Like, we didn't talk about axons, myelin, the sheets, all of that stuff. We didn't, and it's not necessary. Yes, it's good to have an overview. Like, you can say, this is what an axon looks like, this is what a myelin sheath is, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think, yeah, if they could just have the basics of what this is and why it's important for them to know, and all the things to look out for, and what you can do when you're in certain situations and what your body's trying to tell you, right? So so let's go back. If, say, a child is starting to feel really fearful and anxious about an exam, they'll know, okay, it's normal, right? It's normal to have a bit of anxiety about the exam, and I can do this to help it, rather than get them thinking, oh my God, I'm an anxious person, I can never do this. And they get into a different spiral. So you could have like a neutral circumstance, like an exam, have completely different results in the lived experience. And yeah, it's all a matter of knowing what's what and what to do.
Absolutely. And then children, for many of us, and maybe many more are still being raised like that, there was an inherent fear. Oh, what are my parents going to say if I fail this test, if I fail this exam? Which should not matter at all. Like, parents should not be conditioning their children to fear losing their love for failing an exam, especially when we're talking about first grade, second grade. Like,
Mm.
they're still learning what butterflies look like and what sounds the bears make, and that is part of the adventure of being a child. Parents should protect that adventure for as long as they can versus trying to impose their limiting thoughts and their traumas onto the next generations, which is setting them for failure because they would need to do the work from scratch, that nervous system healing from scratch when they're much older and when they have already picked up on so many more traumas as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another episode in itself, really.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah. It's a little bit like at the start of our conversation when you mentioned that dog. You recognize it's a dog, but if you've had a painful experience with that dog,
Mm.
or a dog when you were young, your first response would be fear, or you'll be alerted. A lot of children are like that, and not even children, like a lot of adults, when you give them an opportunity to present their ideas, to apply for an award, for a competition, they're like, oh, what if I fail? Because they're connecting that to, what if I fail when they were children? What if I lose the love of those around me that I care about? So I'd rather not try at all. And that is the complexity of the inner wiring that Inside Out 2 captures very well.
It does.
It's
It
not a
does.
sponsored
Well.
podcast, but absolutely that movie, it's a guide for parents, I would say, how to better
Mm.
balance their nervous system.
100%.
Well, what would you say? How would you complete that sentence? We regulate too.
Mm. There are so many reasons why we regulate. But I think at its core, we regulate so that we can share our gifts to the world. Now, that might seem like a really big thing, but if you think about it, if you are able to handle life's challenges, right, with ease, without overwhelm, think of how much capacity you have to focus on what really matters to you, right? Your values, your purpose in life, if you're the kind of person who believes in life purposes, right? So instead of focusing on all the stresses that come at you, and that's what happened when you're dysregulated, you can't think of anything else but that current challenge, right? So you don't have the time or the bandwidth to really focus on what you want to do in life or your goals, what brings you joy. But when we are regulated, we have that capacity, we have that patience, we have the time, the bandwidth, the creativity. So we're able to figure out what it is that we actually want in life, what's important to us, and more importantly, what can we do to make sure that it happens. So I hope that answers that weird statement of we regulate so that we can do what we're meant to be doing in this world and to share our gifts with this world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. And I would say we regulate because that is the only way for us to share who we are with the world. Otherwise, we're a bunch of coping mechanisms. We're, very much restricted within a shell that's protective because our body is on alert, our mind is on alert. So naturally, there is a firewall that prevents us from truly sharing who we are. And even if we're connected to the internet, we cannot really share who we are online. And with social media, I think the comparison that we made between, the body is the computer and the nervous system is that connection that you have. Sometimes you're connected, sometimes everything appears to be fine, but because you are so dysregulated, you cannot truly make a difference online by being yourself. And that's why your messages are not resonating, your presence is not resonating, because it's not really who you are. Who you are is still there waiting for you to return back to yourself, to start reading. What are the signs? What are the symptoms? What is your body trying to say to you? And there's a beautiful book by Deepak Chopra called Quantum Body, which kind of gives a different interpretation of the body, that it's also the energetic presence that we have. And that energetic presence is affected by our habits. So going back to the physical level, start with the basics. Start with the food that you're eating and start by doing even 10 minutes exercises every day. And your life is going to transform as a result. Are you still with me, Caroline?
Sorry, you just froze. I'm sorry, you just froze for a bit at the end.
I was just saying that, start with the body. I think this is the biggest, outcome of our conversation. Start with the body, and it's an achievable, actionable outcome.
100%.
Yeah. Thank you for joining Big Souls, Big Ideas, Caroline. I absolutely enjoyed our conversation, and I'm excited to see what you create next to guide people onto their healing journey. And hopefully, you are gifted that magic wand that allows you to make an impact in education, because I think raising the children of the future starts with raising them in a way that is more informed and more balanced. That is the only way that we can break these cycles and start having these big open conversations about mental health without denying a part of who we are, a big part of who we are, our inner wiring, this psychology. Still frozen? Caroline?
Hello? Sorry. The last part I had was denying a part of who we are. Yeah, without.
Okay. I think our connection is coming to a halt, which is a great place to say thank you for anyone that's listened to the episode, and wish you all the best in the next few months when it comes to impacting the conversation around nervous system. Thank you for joining us, Caroline. And thank